The funeral hall was quiet, Yoon Seol standing by the memorials of her deceased parents. The air is heavy with grief as she mourns their loss. Her tears flow freely, and in her heart she clings to the only family she has left, her grandfather. For as long as she could remember, her grandfather had been her anchor. He was the one who had shielded her after her parents' tragic passing. From that moment on, Yoon Seol had vowed to do whatever it took to make her grandfather happy. But even the strongest anchors weaken over time. Yoon Seol had recently discovered a heartbreaking truth. Her grandfather was in the late stages of pancreatic cancer. His remaining days were few, and with what little time he had left, he had made a request. He wanted to see her married before he passed away. Yoon Seol's heart churned. Marriage? She was too young, and it felt rushed. Yet, her grandfather's concern for her future left her no choice but to consider it. At college, So-kyun approached Yoon Seol, her carefree and charming friend who always lightened her mood. An idea stuck in her mind as she suddenly dragged him outside the classroom. Once they were outside, she hesitated for a moment before blurting out, "So-kyun, would you marry me?" So-kyun froze, stunned for a moment, then broke into a grin. "Of course, it's sudden, but how could I refuse when you're the one proposing?" he said, then added with a laugh. "But let's marry when we're 30, okay?" Yoon Seol opened her mouth to explain, but his phone rang, interrupting her. One of his friends invited him to meet some pretty girls nearby. So-kyun's grin widened. "Sounds fun. Let's continue this tomorrow, Yoon Seol. I've got to go now." Yoon Seol forced a smile. Okay, go. I was just kidding anyway." So-kyun chuckled, pinching her cheeks. "I knew it, but still my heart was pounding, you know." With that, he waved and walked off, leaving the campus. Yoon Seol watched his retreating figure, her chest tightening. Frustrated, she muttered to herself, "What have I done? What was I expecting from someone who's never serious?" Her thoughts spiraled. Can't he take me seriously just for once? Was my face not serious enough? Lost in her thoughts, she bumped into someone. Startled, she looked up, apologizing hastily. The man with an icy demeanor interrupted her. "Next time, pay attention to where you're walking. Don't daydream." Irritated by his tone, Yoon Seol snapped, "If you saw me daydreaming, you could have avoided me. Instead, you walked right into me. You did it on purpose, didn't you?" Before he could respond, a car sped dangerously close to her. In a swift motion, the man grabbed her arm and pulled her to safety. The momentum brought her crashing into his chest, their faces so close that their lips accidentally brushed. Time seemed to freeze for a moment. Realizing what had just happened, the man quickly released her. Yoon Seol stumbled, her face turning crimson. "Don't get the wrong idea," he said coldly, brushing off his sleeve. "The car was speeding. I only pulled you to keep you safe." Yeah, thanks," she stammered. She straightened herself, avoiding his gaze. "Let's just pretend none of this happened. We're both having a bad day." Without waiting for his reply, she turned to leave. But before she could escape, his amused voice cut through the air. "You're not even going to thank me for saving your life?" His lips curled into a teasing smirk. Then, with a glint of mischief in his eyes, he added, "Or are you planning to leave without compensating me for that kiss just now?" Yoon Seol, still reeling from the close call, retorted, "What kiss? Our lips barely touched." "Don't act like it's such a big deal." Her voice dripped with sarcasm as she added, "What's the matter? Don't tell me you've never been kissed before." The man smirked. "What makes you think that?" "If anything, you're the one who looks like they've never kissed anyone before." Irritated, Yoon Seol shot back, "What's so special about you? I don't even remember kissing you." His smirk deepened. "Really? People don't usually forget their first kiss so easily." Her anger flared at his teasing tone. "First kiss? You're delusional. For your information, you're the 108th person I've kissed, so forgive me if it wasn't memorable." With that, she spun on her heel, her voice sharp as she added, "And don't talk to me if you see me again, you perverted guy." He stood there, watching her storm off with amusement dancing in his eyes. "The 108th, huh? Interesting," he muttered, a faint grin lingering as he watched her disappearing figure. Back at campus, Yoon Seol sat in class, distracted. Her friends laughed and chatted around her, discussing upcoming parties and outings, but she could hardly focus. So-kyun, ever the life of the group, bantered with the others, his carefree smile brightening the mood. Suddenly, the professor walked in, silencing the chatter. "Good morning, everyone," he began, his tone serious. "Today we have a special guest lecturer who will be joining us as a lecturer for the next semester." He introduced himself with a calm, steady voice. "Good morning, my name is Kang Jun-young." Yoon Seol froze, her eyes widening in disbelief. She clutched her notebook tightly, her face a mixture of shock and mortification. Her mind screamed, "The annoying person from yesterday!" Her cheeks burned as she ducked lower in her seat. Her panic escalated as his eyes scanned the classroom. She ducked behind her notebook, whispering to herself, "Did I see it wrong? Please, let me be wrong." Suddenly, his voice rang out, sharp and clear, cutting through the chatter. "You, the one clutching the book, what's your name?" Startled, Yoon Seol froze. "I'm Choi Yoon Seol, sir," she stammered, trying to steady her voice. A playful smirk tugged at his lips. "Miss Choi," he began smoothly, "I never knew that biting a book could help you absorb its content." The class erupted into laughter, and Yoon Seol's face turned crimson. Before she could recover, his smirk deepened. "Well then," he said, flipping the page casually, Why don't you explain page 108? Her heart skipped a beat at the deliberate pause before his next words. Oh, my mistake, he added, his tone laced with mischief. I meant page 10.8. His eyes sparkled with amusement as he continued. Go ahead, Miss Choi. Please enlighten us. His smirk widened, clearly enjoying her discomfort. As class ends, Sujin casually greeted Professor Kang. Why didn't you tell me you'd be teaching here? She asked, her tone light and playful. Let's have a coffee, she added. Kang Junyoung's expression remained polite but distant as he replied, I have something to take care of after this. Also, it's not appropriate for a professor and student to have coffee together. Oh, Sujin, you know him? One of the classmates asked, surprised. Sujin replied nonchalantly, Yeah, our families know each other. Later, Kyung-eun, Yoon Seol's friend, suggested lunch, craving jimpong, but Yoon Seol declined. I'm just going to head straight home. I'm just tired, she said with a weak smile. Walking through the hallway, she noticed Kang Junyoung ahead of her. Gathering her courage, she called out, Mr. Kang, can we talk for a moment? He stopped and turned, his sharp gaze locking onto hers. I'm sorry for how our first meeting went, she began hesitantly. But can we not bring our issue into class? Me? He asked, his tone unreadable. Don't you remember me? His smirk returned, a hint of amusement in his eyes. I never bring personal issues into my class. I act like a professor who advises his students. His voice dipped slightly, carrying a hint of sarcasm. Don't be arrogant. Her mouth opened in shock, but no words came out. As he turned and walked away, she stood there, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. Later that evening, back in her apartment, Yoon Seol's phone buzzed. It was her grandfather calling. She answered quickly. Yoon Seol, how are you? He asked cheerfully. I'm good, Grandpa. How about you? She replied. Haha, I'm doing well. Listen, I'll be in the city this Saturday to meet an old friend's son. You should join us. Well, I don't have any plans, so sure, she said. Great, I'll pick you up then. See you soon. The call ended, leaving her staring at her phone. The next day arrived with a crispness in the air, and Yoon Seol found herself accompanying her grandfather to a luxurious estate. Kang Tae-jin, her grandfather called out with warmth as the host approached. The owner of such a large company shouldn't need to personally greet guests at the front gate, Yoon Seol's grandfather teased lightly. But I had to come out. I wanted to meet this young lady, Kang Tae-jin replied, chuckling. As she bowed politely, her grandfather introduced her to Kang Tae-jin and his wife, Hae-suk. These are the children of my late friend, Kang Dong-woo. They were also close friends with your parents, and the owner of TJ Corp. It's lovely to meet you, Yoon Seol said with a warm smile. You've grown into such a beautiful young lady, Tae-jin said warmly. Ah, come inside, Hae-suk added, motioning them toward the grand entrance. As they walked, Tae-jin said, Your family has contributed so much to mine. Without you, TJ Corp wouldn't be where it is today. Don't say that, her grandfather interjected, waving off the compliment. As they entered the home, Tae-jin sighed, his voice tinged with guilt. Yoon Seol, I regret not reaching out after your parents' passing. I should have. Hae-suk gently cut him off, her tone soft and comforting. Let's not bring up something so heavy now, dear. Tae-jin quickly shifted the mood with a warm smile. Yoon Seol, if you're willing, consider yourself part of our family. I'd be thrilled to finally have a daughter, maybe even a younger sibling, and an older brother for my kids. Hae-suk shook her head with a playful smile. Tae-jin, you're going to embarrass her. You've always wanted a daughter, and now you're jumping at the chance. Tae-jin turned, gesturing with pride. Oh, there he is, our second son Jin Seo. Say hello. The young man bowed politely. Nice to meet you. I'm Kang Jin Seo. As they continued chatting, the sound of confident footsteps echoed down the hallway. Everyone turned just as the firstborn son entered the room. The air grew tense for a moment, as Yoon Seol locked eyes with none other than Kang Junyoung, the man who had saved her from that speeding car just days ago. Her eyes widened in shock. Both of them froze, their eyes locking in disbelief at the sheer unexpectedness of the moment. Outside the house, Junyoung broke the silence first. Fate really has a sense of humor, doesn't it? He said, his voice laced with amusement. Yoon Seol took a deep breath, trying to suppress her irritation. Why don't we start over? Thank you for saving my life, she said, her tone polite but guarded. Junyoung's eyes glinted with mischief as he replied, Oh, you said you didn't remember, but now it seems like you do remember that we key. Hey, Yoon Seol interrupted sharply, her face heating up. No need for details. And yes, I remember everything, sir. She added the last word with an awkward smile. He chuckled softly. Apart from class, just call me Junyoung. Yoon Seol straightened her posture and shook her head. How could I? You're older and clearly much more experienced. His smirk widened. Oh, experienced, you say? You mean first kiss experience? But I can't compare to you, you've had it 108 times. Her face burned red as she stammered, glaring at him. He chuckled, unbothered. Isn't that right, Miss Choi? Her frustration boiled over. You're impossible. Because of my grandfather and your parents, I'm trying to be civil, but you. She jabbed her finger toward him. Be careful. Outside we don't know each other. Understand? With a casual shrug, he replied, Exactly what I want. No need to pretend to be nice. Leaning slightly closer, he added, It doesn't suit me anyway. As he turned to leave, Yoon Seol stood frozen, her fists clenched as irritation simmered within her. Back at the college, Yoon Seol confided in her friend, revealing that she was looking for a potential partner to marry and had even proposed to Seokhyun. Shocked, her friend exclaimed, "How can you just marry anyone like that?" She then scolded Yoon Seol, "You need someone mature and established, not just anyone." Suddenly, her friend's expression brightened as an idea struck her. "I know, my aunt runs a matchmaking business. Let's arrange a blind date for you." Without waiting for a response, she added decisively, "I'll set it up for this Saturday." On Saturday, at a hotel, Yoon Seol sat waiting for her matchmaking partner to arrive. When he finally appeared, he introduced himself politely, but soon began rambling endlessly about his own good looks. The following Saturday, she met another man who was overly cautious about diet and wouldn't even let her eat freely. As the weeks went by, Yoon Seol met various men. Some were overly bold, hitting on her directly, while others believed in ghosts and shared unsettling, scary stories. It was becoming clear to her just how difficult it was to find a suitable match. However, one Saturday, she met a man who seemed genuine. As she entertained the thought, she accidentally dropped her teacup. The man quickly offered her his handkerchief, a small gesture that sparked a glimmer of hope within her. Perhaps there was still a chance to find a decent man. At the same hotel, on the other side, Junyoung sat in a chair arguing over the phone with his mother. "Why do you make promises without consulting me first?" he said, his tone laced with irritation. His mother calmly explained, "It wasn't me. My friend wanted to introduce her daughter to you after seeing how well your company is performing." As soon as the call ended, someone called his name. A young woman stood in front of him, smiling brightly. Remembering his mother's words, Junyoung regarded her with a serious expression and asked, "You look familiar. Have we met before?" The girl smiled brightly and replied, "Yes, we met last year at Prince Ivan's birthday party." Without waiting for a response, she began rambling about how she could help him expand his business by leveraging her connection with the prince. Junyoung listened, growing visibly annoyed with her relentless chatter. Finally, he stood up and said politely, "It was nice meeting you, but I have some work to attend to. I should get going." The girl quickly suggested that she had arrived at an inconvenient time and offered to leave first. As she walked toward the exit, Junyoung let out a sigh and sat back in his chair, relieved to finally have some peace. On the other side of the hotel, Yoon Seol's meeting seemed to be going well as they engaged in conversation. The man started, politely, asking about her family. However, his tone shifted when he revealed, "I spent 30 million just to meet someone on my level." Yoon Seol was taken aback, her shock evident on her face. Noticing her reaction, the man suddenly grabbed her hand and said, "Don't lie to me. I know people like you. Low class, desperate. Follow me to the room, or I'll report you." Her anger flared, and she retorted, "Report me to the police. I'm not afraid." Just then, a familiar voice echoed through the air. Junyoung, who was passing by, stopped in his tracks. The man continued, ignoring her defiance. "If you want money, I can help you get it quickly." Yoon Seol clenched her teeth, trying to control her temper. Before the man could say more, his hand was firmly grabbed by someone else. Startled, Yoon Seol looked up, only to see Junyoung standing there, glaring at the man with an icy expression. His grip tightened, causing the man to wince and stumble backward in pain. Without a word, Junyoung grabbed Yoon Seol's hand and swiftly led her out of the scene. Struggling to keep up with his pace, Yoon Seol stumbled behind him. "Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been there," she said breathlessly. She glanced down at her hand and added, "You can let go now, Junyoung." He released her hand and asked, "So, you were here for a blind date?" Irritated, she replied, "Whatever it is, it's none of your business." Junyoung turned to her and, with a smirk, remarked, "Judging by how you're dressed, it must have been a date. Unless what that guy said was true?" Her face flushed, and she quickly denied it. She sat down on a nearby chair with a sigh. Taking a deep breath, she explained, "My grandfather is ill. This was his last wish to see me married. My friend's aunt runs a matchmaking agency, so I decided to try this." Junyoung's expression grew serious as he asked, "I thought marriage and love were every woman's dream. Is it really okay to go on blind dates like this?" Sighing again, she replied, "It's not easy, but I don't need love. For my grandfather's happiness, I just want the title of wife." Junyoung stared at her intently as though deep in thought. She added softly, "I thought the man earlier was a good person. I thought I could finally make my grandfather's wish come true." Junyoung pulled up a chair beside her, sitting down without a word. He appeared to be calculating something in his mind before he finally glanced at her and said, "Choi Yoon Seol, just marry me." Yoon Seol froze for a moment, completely taken aback. A second later, she laughed nervously. "You must be joking." His expression remained serious as he replied, "Didn't you say you wouldn't refuse if someone asked you to marry them?" Her laughter faded. "Yes, but why does it have to be you?" Junyoung leaned forward slightly and said calmly, "Because it's beneficial for both of us. We meet each other's criteria, and our families know each other. Your grandfather will be happy if you marry me." Suspicious, she asked, "And what do you get out of this?" "I need the status of a husband just like you need the title of wife," he replied. Realization dawned on her, and her eyes widened. "Wait, are you also here for—" "Yes," he interrupted. "I don't want to waste my time on blind dates. If I marry someone else, I'd have to deal with their feelings, but you only care about the title. It's convenient for both of us." She looked at him thoughtfully and mumbled, I can't imagine us getting married. Then, after a pause, she said, Can I have some time to think? With a confident smile, Junyoung replied, Fine. I'll give you 3 days. On the third day at 5 in the afternoon, meet me at the parking lot where we first met. If you don't show up, that means you are rejecting my offer. 3 days later, at the parking lot, Junyoung stood waiting as promised. He glanced at his watch. It was 4:50 in the afternoon. His eyes scanned the quiet, empty path ahead. Minutes ticked by, and he checked the time again. Now it was 5:10. Disappointed, he unlocked his car door, thinking to himself, What was I even expecting by coming here? Just as he was about to get into the car, someone called out his name. He turned to see Yoon Seol running toward him, slightly out of breath. Sorry, I'm so sorry I'm late, she said, panting. My class ended later than expected. Junyoung's expression remained serious as he replied, You're 10 minutes late. Still trying to catch her breath, she responded, I'm here to accept your offer, but I have one condition. She straightened herself and looked at him firmly. I want this marriage to stay a secret, at least until I graduate. You're quite popular on campus, and if this gets out, it could be a disaster for me. Junyoung's lips curled into a faint smile as he nodded. Very well. He extended his hand for a handshake and said, In that case, nice working with you, Miss Choi. But he suddenly pulled her forward, and she stumbled into his arms. He held her steady, his grip firm. Startled, she placed her hands on his chest, pushing against him. What are you doing? Just hugging me like that, she exclaimed. With a smirk, he leaned in slightly and said, Well, aren't we a couple now? We should start looking like one. At the Kang Mansion during dinner, the atmosphere grew tense as everyone turned their attention to Junyoung, who had just announced he had some news to share. With a steady expression, he stated, I'm going to marry Choi Yoon Seol. His father's face lit up with happiness. Mr. Choi's granddaughter? That's wonderful news, he exclaimed. In contrast, Mrs. Kang's expression clouded with concern. His father nodded approvingly. I had a feeling about this when they visited us, but I wasn't sure. Junyoung responded calmly, We've been dating for quite some time, but I didn't know our parents were acquainted. Mrs. Kang interrupted, her voice firm yet restrained. How long have you two been in a relationship? You were only teaching at her campus last week. Isn't this marriage decision a bit rushed? Junyoung met her gaze evenly. We've been dating long before I started teaching at her campus. I simply didn't tell you, he replied smoothly. Then, with a faint smile, he added, And that's why I dislike it when you push me into blind dates with your friends' daughters. Don't worry, Mother. I'm marrying Yoon Seol because I love her. Mrs. Kang's eyes widened slightly, a wave of panic washing over her as she thought, Does he even know what love really is? Irritated, she clenched the fork in her hand tightly, though her expression remained composed. With a forced smile, she said, Junyoung, why don't you bring her here? I'd like to talk to her myself. On the phone, Yoon Seol was stunned by the news. Worried, she asked, What if she gets suspicious? Junyoung's tone remained calm as he replied, Just stick to the plan. Answer everything as we discussed. I'll wait for you at the usual spot. Don't be late. As the call ended, Yoon Seol stared at her phone, anxiety swirling in her chest. How am I supposed to stay calm? She thought. The next day at the Kang house, Mrs. Kang greeted her with a disappointed tone. How could Junyoung leave you alone like this? Awkwardly, Yoon Seol responded, He had an urgent matter to attend to, so I came alone. Mrs. Kang studied her for a moment, then said, He's already told us about the marriage, but you're still in college. Isn't this a bit rushed? Yoon Seol straightened her posture and replied firmly, We've decided to keep it a secret until I graduate. Suspicious, Mrs. Kang pressed further, her tone slightly sharp. How long have you two been dating? And why didn't you inform us earlier? Sensing the tension, Yoon Seol tried to ease her concern. We're really serious about this, she said, her voice steady. Mrs. Kang seemed to calm slightly, her expression softening. It's not that I dislike you, she said thoughtfully. I just have a few questions. She looked directly at Yoon Seol, her gaze serious. Do you really love my son? Trying her best to appear sincere, Yoon Seol replied, Yes, I love him with all my heart. Mrs. Kang narrowed her eyes and asked again, Does Junyoung love you? Yoon Seol froze, her mind racing for an answer. Before she could respond, a familiar voice interrupted. Mom, shouldn't you be asking me that? Startled, Yoon Seol turned as Junyoung entered the room, wrapping his arm around her shoulders and pulling her close. Trapping her in his embrace, he addressed Mrs. Kang. I told you, we love each other. What more should I do to convince you? He looked down at Yoon Seol, a playful smile tugging at his lips. Mom isn't asking you anything strange, is she, honey? Awkwardly, Yoon Seol shook her head and replied, No, she's just worried about you. Mrs. Kang observed the exchange quietly, her worry deepening. As they left the house, Yoon Seol complained, Did you really need to act like that? She said, her tone frustrated. Junyoung replied casually, How else would Mom believe us? You didn't need to hug me, she retorted. He smirked slightly. You should have seen your face when she asked you those questions. You looked so awkward, especially when I hugged you. She huffed. How could I not be awkward? We barely know each other, and you didn't even warn me beforehand. As they reached her home, she muttered a polite thanks and tried to get out of the car. But before she could, Junyoung caught her hand and pulled it to his lips, pressing a kiss to it. "Seems like we need to practice," he said with a teasing smile. Her eyes widened, and her face turned crimson. "Practice?" she murmured, flustered. "Yes, practice," he replied. "We need to look like a real couple every chance we get." She yanked her hand away and shot back. "No, we don't need that. I can manage just fine," he teased. "See, you're already confused, just like now." Leaning closer, he hovered over her, his gaze playful, especially when her face grew even redder as the heat rose to her cheeks. Panicked, she pushed him back. "I said I don't need it," she exclaimed, before hurriedly getting out of the car. As she was leaving, her phone rang. Seeing it was her grandfather, she answered quickly. On the other end, her grandfather's voice was warm and amused. "You should have told me earlier, and I would have agreed to your marriage then and there." Hearing his happiness, a smile tugged at her lips, though a pang of nervousness hit her. It's too late to back out now, she thought. After the call ended, she turned back toward the car. Leaning down through the window, she said, "Well, let's practice then." Inside the car, as she leaned closer to him, she asked hesitantly, "Do we really need to practice kissing?" He glanced at her, his eyes glinting with mischief. "What do you think?" Without waiting for an answer, he grabbed her by the neck and gently cupped her face. The next second, his lips captured hers. She froze, her eyes wide with shock. As the moment stretched, their kiss deepened, drawing her further into it. After what felt like an eternity, Junyoung pulled back with a small smile. "That was a wedding kiss," he said casually, brushing his thumb against her lips. "We're getting married soon, so it's only right to practice for it, don't you think?" Still flustered, she nodded wordlessly and quickly left. Inside the car, Junyoung leaned back, rubbing the back of his neck. His cheeks flushed slightly as he replayed what had just happened. The next day at college, as Yoon Seol glanced at her friends, she recalled her conversation with Junyoung. "We're keeping it a secret, but can I tell one of my friends? I need someone to be there for me," she had asked, and he had agreed. Looking at her friends now, she hesitated, unsure who to confide in. Later, as she walked with Young-eun, she gathered her courage and said, "I need to talk to you about something." Young-eun grinned teasingly. "What is it? Are you getting married or something?" Awkwardly, Yoon Seol replied. "Actually, yeah." Young-eun froze, her eyes wide in shock. "What? Who?" Not wanting anyone else to overhear, Yoon Seol led her to a quiet spot. Once they were alone, she took a deep breath and said, "I'm going to marry Mr. Kang." Young-eun pointed at her accusingly. "I knew it. I knew something was going on between you two." "Shh. Keep it down," Yoon Seol whispered, trying to calm her. "Only you know about this, so please keep it a secret." Her friend nodded and hugged her tightly. "Congratulations, you finally found a way." But after a moment, Young-eun's smile faded into concern. "But why is he proposing marriage? What's his reason?" Yoon Seol decided to be honest. "He's the same as me. He needs the status and doesn't want to waste time." Young-eun thought for a moment before asking, "Wait, could it be that he's the one who saved you from all those blind dates?" Before Yoon Seol could answer, Young-eun grinned mischievously. "He's like your white knight, isn't he? Riding in on a white horse to save the day." As Young-eun's imagination ran wild, Yoon Seol rolled her eyes, but before she could respond, So-kyun appeared behind them. "What are you two whispering about?" he asked cheerfully, leading them toward the campus cafe. "Let's grab some coffee." In a coffee shop, Junyoung sat quietly, sipping his coffee. As he glanced outside, his eyes caught a group of 3 people approaching the cafe, laughing together. His gaze lingered on the one person among them he was about to marry, Yoon Seol. Her bright smile lit up her face, and for a moment he couldn't tear his eyes away. Suddenly a voice interrupted his thoughts. "Junyoung!" He turned to see Sujin standing nearby. "Hello, Sujin," he replied calmly. Sujin took a seat beside him with a cheerful smile. "If I'd known you were coming here, I would have joined you earlier," she said casually. As they chatted, the group entered the cafe. Spotting Sujin, So-kyun waved enthusiastically. "Sujin! Oh, and Mr. Kang is here too," he said, his voice full of surprise. So-kyun turned to Junyoung with excitement. "We're going out to eat. Would you and Sujin like to join us?" Junyoung glanced at Yoon Seol, who was subtly signaling him to decline the invitation. A smirk tugged at his lips as he ignored her silent plea. Turning back to So-kyun, he replied, "Okay, I'll join." "Great. Let's go now," So-kyun said, his excitement evident. As they sat in the restaurant, Yoon Seol couldn't shake the discomfort of Junyoung's presence. The atmosphere felt tense, and she couldn't relax. So-kyun, as usual, offered her a half-cooked egg, a gesture he always made when they ate together. "You like this, right?" he said, placing it on her plate. Junyoung noticed the gesture, his gaze lingering on them. Noticing his stare, So-kyun explained with a cheerful smile. "Yoon Seol is from Jeojae Island. She loves eggs on top. It's a thing there." Junyoung smiled lightly. "Oh, I didn't know that," he said, turning to Yoon Seol. "When did you move to Seoul, then?" Before Yoon Seol could answer, So-kyun chimed in again. "She moved here when college started. Before that, she was living in Jeojae with her grandfather." Yoon Seol felt awkward and thought, why can't he just shut his mouth? Her thoughts were interrupted when So-kyun took food from her bowl with his chopsticks. Frustrated, she snapped, "Hey, don't use your chopsticks in my food. Here, take all of it now." Sujin, observing their exchange, laughed. Oh, you two have such a cute bond. So-kyun grinned, putting his arm around Yoon Seol's shoulders. Yeah, we're really close friends. Jin-young remained silent, his expression unreadable as he watched the interaction. Yoon Seol, however, felt something wasn't right. Kyung-un sighed quietly, thinking about how strange the situation felt. After finishing their meal, So-kyun and Soo-jin excused themselves, waving goodbye as they left for their club activities. The remaining three waved back, and Kyung-un, sensing the tension, spoke up. I think it's better if I head out too. Yoon Seol wanted to leave with her, but before she could, Jin-young grabbed her bag from behind, stopping her. Noticing this, she simply said, Okay, you go first. Once the others were gone, Jin-young looked at her and said bluntly, You should have told me earlier that you have a boyfriend. It's uncomfortable for me. Irritated, Yoon Seol snapped, He's not my boyfriend. She glared at him and added, And why did you even agree to come? Jin-young replied calmly. We agreed to keep our relationship secret on campus, but that doesn't mean we don't know each other. I was just being natural in front of my students. Looking at him, Yoon Seol thought, I know it's not a real marriage, but how can he stay so calm? As he started to leave, he commanded, Come with me to the car. Feeling a pang of sadness, she thought, What do I even expect from someone like Mr. Kang? Suddenly, he extended his hand toward her. Shocked, she asked, What? He replied smoothly, We should practice whenever we have the opportunity, right? She hesitated, staring at him for a moment. Finally, she placed her hand in his. As they walked together, hand in hand, she thought, After all, this relationship is supposed to be without feelings, right? Determined, she resolved, If he can be cold, then so can I. When they reached the car, Jin-young opened the door and commented, I noticed you're still uncomfortable holding hands. Then, with a slight smirk, he added, You should be skilled at this by now, considering you've kissed 108 times. Yoon Seol glared at him, unsure whether to be angry or just let it slide. Deciding there was no harm in following along, she replied simply, Sorry. Trying to improve, she grabbed his hand again and asked, Like this? Or maybe like this? Experimenting with different ways to hold hands, she added, Which one looks more romantic? Jin-young intertwined his fingers with hers, holding her hand firmly. Like this, he said with a steady gaze. Yoon Seol looked at him, feeling the warmth of his hand. For a moment, she didn't know how to respond, her heart fluttering despite herself. As Yoon Seol chatted with Kyung-un, her friend expressed concern about the nature of her marriage. It's legally binding, but it's still not real. How long do you two plan to keep pretending? Kyung-un asked seriously. Yoon Seol thought to herself, She's right, I need to come up with a plan. She pondered, Jin-young is a successful businessman. It's unlikely he hasn't thought all of this through. But what about me? Am I just going to follow his steps without considering my own? The next day, inside Jin-young's car, she handed him a paper. What's this? He asked, his brow furrowing. It's a letter of agreement, she replied confidently. You take one copy. It's a marriage agreement to make sure neither of us is at a disadvantage. Jin-young examined the paper carefully. That's correct, he murmured, reading through the points. The first point, maintaining confidentiality about the marriage, makes sense, but marital status would be a better term. It's clearer that way. He glanced at her. I don't have a problem with the first point, but if you're telling one of your friends, I'll tell one of mine. Moving on, he read the second point. Behaving appropriately. I'm okay with this one too. Then he got to the third point. Personal lives are separate. He read aloud. Before he could comment, she interrupted. Yes, we're not actually married, so we're free to do as we please. He smirked, raising an eyebrow. So you can go out with your boyfriend? Her glare sharpened. It's not like that. His eyes twinkled mischievously as he continued reading. I disagree with the fourth point, he said suddenly. How will our families believe us if we're not affectionate in front of them? She explained firmly, It doesn't have to be all the time, and you need to inform me beforehand. He shook his head. That's not practical. We'll need to improvise. But we're not going to meet often, she countered. We can plan ahead. He leaned back casually, dropping a bombshell. Oh, I forgot to mention, after we're married, my mother wants us to stay at the family house until you graduate. It's one of her conditions. Her eyes narrowed. And you're telling me this now? Ignoring her irritation, he continued. That's why points 4 and 5 should be removed. As for point 6, he paused, glancing at her. If your grandfather passes away, there's no longer any benefit for you, so I understand. Her frustration boiled over. Why does point 5 have to be removed? I think it's unnecessary, he replied simply, leaning closer. His smirk deepened as he asked, What, do you think I'd do something to you? Or, he paused, his gaze piercing. Are you afraid of being swayed? Her cheeks flushed with anger as she glared at him. Fine, she gritted out, crossing out point 4. But point 5 stays. I'll modify point 4 instead. She handed him the revised agreement. He read it aloud. Not sleeping in the same bed? Yes, she replied firmly. This marriage is business, not emotional, right? Without further argument, he grabbed the paper and signed it. She watched him seriously before saying, Once you're done, close your eyes. He frowned slightly, confused. Why? Before he could process her words, he noticed her leaning toward him, her eyes closed. He froze, his mind racing. She opened her eyes slightly, realizing his hesitation. Flustered, she grabbed his cheeks. Ah, sorry. I forgot to take off my hat. I was just practicing the wedding. Before she could finish, he reached out, removed her hat, and tossed it aside. In one swift motion, he leaned in, cupping her face. A wedding kiss, he murmured, his voice low, is initiated by the groom. Her heartbeat quickened as he drew closer, his gaze locked onto hers. Her breath hitched as he pressed his lips to hers, the kiss deepening as they both became lost in the moment, realizing its significance. As the days passed and the wedding day drew closer, Yoon Seol's phone buzzed constantly with updates, bookings for venues, arrangements for the ceremony, and countless details. She visited each place with Junyoung's mother, whether it was shopping for their bedroom, tasting wedding cakes, or trying on wedding dresses. One afternoon, as she slipped into her wedding dress and stood before the mirror, a wave of realization hit her. This marriage, though a contract for mutual benefit, was still very real. She stared at her reflection, her emotions swirling. The ceremony was set to take place at their family home on Jeojae Island. Walking through the garden, she noticed the flurry of preparations, the decorations, the flowers, the tables being set. But she couldn't understand why she didn't feel happy. Inside the house, her aunt approached her with a concerned expression. "Where's Junyoung? I haven't seen him yet," her aunt said, sighing. "He should be here by now." Hearing those words, a pang of unease struck Yoon Seol's heart. An emptiness she couldn't quite define began to settle over her. Suddenly, someone called her name. She turned toward the door, and there he was, her husband-to-be, standing with his luggage, his face calm but welcoming. Relief washed over her as she saw him, her heart unexpectedly lifting. Noticing her expression, Junyoung walked over, gently taking the box she was holding. "Sorry," he said. "I came without letting you know." Before they could continue, her aunt appeared, and Yoon Seol quickly introduced her to Junyoung. As her aunt and Junyoung chatted about the upcoming ceremony, Yoon Seol's gaze lingered on him. Without realizing it, a smile began to form on her face. She felt a genuine sense of calm and happiness. At night, at the Choi house, everyone gathered around the dinner table, casually chatting. Yoon Seol's aunt scolded her gently. "You need to eat more, or you'll faint on your wedding day," Yoon Seol protested. "I can't eat too much, aunt, or my dress won't fit." Junyoung, sitting nearby, interjected with a calm assurance. "Don't worry, aunt. After we're married, I'll make sure she eats plenty." Yoon Seol nodded. "See? Now you can relax." Her aunt smiled warmly, commenting, "It's no surprise that Yoon Seol said she fell in love at first sight." Hearing this, Junyoung raised an eyebrow and turned to her. "Oh, really? She never told me that." Her grandfather chimed in with a chuckle. "That's just how she is. She doesn't always say what she feels, but she will love you wholeheartedly." Later, as Yoon Seol prepared a room for Junyoung, he entered with his luggage. Glancing around, he asked, "Is this your room?" "Yeah," she replied. "I'll sleep in my aunt's room tonight. If this feels uncomfortable, then I'm sorry," she added hesitantly. "It's fine," he replied simply. She asked softly, "Why didn't you tell me earlier you were coming? I would have prepared a better room for you." He looked at her for a moment, then raised his hand and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Because my future wife didn't bother contacting me the day before our wedding. What else could I do but come find her myself?" Caught off guard, she looked at him, and he smiled faintly. "Thank you for coming," she said sincerely. Junyoung's smile deepened as he leaned closer, pressing a light kiss to her forehead. Pulling away, he said softly, "Good night, my bride," her heart unexpectedly fluttering. On the wedding day, everything was set for the ceremony to begin. As Junyoung got ready, his friend remarked, "I can't believe you're getting married. A few days ago, you were going on blind dates arranged by your mom. Who's the bride, anyway?" With a smirk, Junyoung replied, "Definitely not someone I met on a blind date." His friend's tone turned serious. "Then who?" Ignoring the question, Junyoung knocked on the door of the room where Yoon Seol was getting ready. Her friend opened the door and said, "She's not ready yet." But Junyoung persisted. "I'll only be a moment," he assured her, stepping inside. He called out, "Yoon Seol," but as he looked up, he froze, his eyes widening. Standing there was Yoon Seol, dressed as a stunning bride in her wedding gown. Noticing his stare, she asked, "Yes." Realizing he had been standing silently for too long, Junyoung cleared his throat and gestured to his friend. "This is my business partner and groomsman. I thought I'd introduce him." She bowed politely to the man, and then introduced her friend to Junyoung's friend. After exchanging pleasantries, Junyoung reminded his friend, "Since this is a secret marriage, don't let anyone at the office find out." His friend nodded. "Got it. I'll head out first to practice." Yoon Seol's friend added, "Me too. I'll leave you two for now." Before leaving, they both advised, "Just relax, okay?" After the door closed, Yoon Seol looked at Junyoung nervously. "Do we really look that tense?" Junyoung replied confidently, "I'm not, are you?" "Of course I am," she exclaimed. "If our act gets exposed, my grandfather will be devastated." Placing a hand on her chest, she added, "So this is what it feels like. No wonder people sometimes run away on their wedding day." Junyoung stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. "So, as they suggested, should we practice kissing to relax?" He leaned in, his face drawing closer to hers, their lips just inches apart. "But if we do, you'll have to redo your makeup," he teased with a smirk. Flustered, she pushed him away. "Why are you always thinking about kissing? You're such a pervert." Junyoung chuckled, stepping back with an amused smile. See? Now you're not nervous anymore, are you? She stood there, bewildered, watching him leave. What just happened? She thought, her heart racing. Under the soft shadow at the wedding venue, Junyoung stood waiting for his bride. His gaze fixed on the path ahead, and soon she appeared, Yoon Seol, holding her grandfather's hand, walking slowly and shyly toward him. As their eyes met, her heartbeat quickened, and she instinctively looked down, unable to hold his gaze. Junyoung, however, remained composed, his eyes never leaving her as she approached. When they finally reached him, Junyoung, unable to wait any longer, extended his hand toward her. Her grandfather glanced at his outstretched hand, then gently placed Yoon Seol's hand into Junyoung's, sealing the moment with a silent gesture of trust. The ceremony continued, and as they exchanged rings, their families couldn't contain their happiness, smiles lighting up their faces. Suddenly the groomsman announced, "Now it's time for the kiss to seal the wedding vows," making Yoon Seol tense visibly. Junyoung whispered softly, "Now's the time to show the results of our practice. Relax. You look stiff." As he reached up to remove her veil, she whispered back nervously, "But we didn't practice in front of this many people." He chuckled lightly, his smile reassuring. "Just close your eyes," he whispered. She glanced at him with wide eyes before slowly closing them, trusting his words. Junyoung leaned in, his face mere inches from hers, and in the next moment their lips met, sealing their wedding with a kiss. The crowd erupted in applause, and with that kiss, they were officially declared Mr. and Mrs. Kang.